welcome back to Memory Card. This is our slot 2. Last week we talked about Pokemon ZA. This week we're talking about Pokemon Red and Blue, when Tom and I were youngins on the playground trading Pokemon to our friends.
I'm not going to lie, that actually never happened for me, but yeah.
Oh, man. Why?
I know, you're shocked. I didn't get into it until a little bit later. And so I missed all the Pokemon playground trades.
Had the boxy Game Boy and the long cord that would connect. It was like there was no easy way to trade back in the day. You hoped that the cord would stay in the slot because it wasn't USB. I don't even know what type of transfer
proprietary
cable that was.
Nintendo.
Yeah, seriously. But trading from Red and Blue because you couldn't catch all the originals. Oh, man. So last week we talked about ZA, and this week we're talking about Red Blue when
the OG,
we
baby,
started our Pokemon franchise, right? There's so much to dive into from back in the day between your very first Pokemon, right? Choosing between Charmander, Bulbasaur, and Squirtle, right? And just recently I saw that I didn't even realize that my copy was blue, and if I had chosen the character's name randomly, or where it gives you a predetermined one, that blue is actually Gary. I didn't realize that I was the enemy.
Oh, because red is red, right? Like that's what
red was
them.
Ash and red, and then blue was Blue and Gary and some other name.
Ugh, Gary. Terrible name. Sorry for any Garys out there. But he is your rival, so it makes sense that he's got a name like that where you're just like, ugh.
But the funny thing is, like, the TV show, he started out with a Pikachu, and it wasn't until, like, years later that you had Yellow. So which copy was your first one?
So I opted for blue as well, and I don't think I even knew... I mean, I must have known that there were different Pokemon in one over the other, but this was 1998, so this was, like, either early internet or pre-internet for me, and I think it was pre. No, maybe it was very early. Never mind.
AOL dial-up.
But like having info as to what Pokemon were in one versus the other probably escaped me. I know that I made my decision based on the fact that my friend had red, and I didn't like that on the original Game Boy, the color of the screen was effectively red or blue. And I was like, well, I don't want to look at a red screen the whole time, so I went with the blue one because I thought it was just pleasing to the eye. Had I known that I could have gotten... Well, I guess you could have gotten Charmander in either one. But the Pokemon Red and Blue box art goes pretty hard.
Yeah. Do you have a sealed copy of it?
No, because I'm not a millionaire. But, yeah, so I naturally went Fire type. That was my go-to pretty much every time a Pokemon game came out. Honestly, up until Pokemon Legends ZA, I went with the water dude, little water crocodile thing, but only because it kind of reminds me of my dog a little bit. So I was just like, that's why I picked him.
Well, that's why I want to catch the Zygarde. What's his name? The dog that he's got the green scarf in the new ZA one.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
I want him so badly. But anyway, back to where you were saying pre-internet age, right? Like Nintendo Power printed over the course of 6 months a little Pokemon Power pamphlet, and those pamphlets over the course of 6 months was the entirety of the game and showed you weaknesses and strengths, where to find all the TMs, where to find capsules, where to find a Pokeball just hidden in some grass. But it also gave you like a lot of hints on which Pokemon were in each version, right? And we could go down that rabbit hole of like, is Meowth better than Arcanine or what, Growlithe, or whatever the differences were. But there is no version of that now, which is kind of nice. It's just one game, right? You can still trade with people somehow. I think it's coming. But the original... Go ahead.
I was going to say, for Legends, there's only one game. But every other mainline Pokemon game has had two versions since, still.
Yeah. Sword, Shield. What was the last one I skipped out on?
Scarlet Violet was the last one.
Yeah. Skipped
Worthy
out
of
on
a
that.
skip, by the way. And the two version aspect of it was really interesting because apparently it was Shigeru Miyamoto who was like, hey, why don't you just split it into two games to like emphasize the trade aspect of Pokemon at the time. And they were like, oh, okay, which was also maybe in the back of his head a shrewd business decision because I think those games sold over 30 million copies. And I guarantee, much like there are people today, buy both versions of the game. Was a pretty interesting selling point. But on its surface, was a really cool way to kind of market like, hey, these games are kind of the same but also different, and you should be communicating with people in order to figure out what that is. And I kind of miss that era of Pokemon. I think that's what made these games so special when we were younger was like we couldn't just look anything up at will. We kind of had to experiment. And like the game's rooted in a guy who grew up exploring, the countryside and finding bugs. And that's kind of what this is. So like there were a lot of stories tossed around of like, oh, like what's your party like? Oh, where'd you find that? And how did you get there? And a lot of it was just kind of based on like classroom chatter and stuff, which, you can hop online and get a walkthrough now. It's not the same as talking to a room full of people and being wowed by what they did and then trying to go home and remember what they said and follow those instructions. Like there was something really cool about that, like almost pure and innocent in a way.
Yeah, I mean, spoilers, right? It ruins things for people nowadays, and the internet's so fast when it comes to how to find things. Like, I like when a game is like, oh, you haven't found the final secret in this, and it's like 30 years later, and the internet's like rushing to figure out what it is. But back in the day, it was just like, oh, if I click A everywhere, maybe somewhere I will just randomly grab like a Pokeball.
Got to check those trash cans, man.
One of my teacher friends posed the question the other day when because I'm reading Capsule Monsters, right? This is basically a gacha machine comes out and you get a random Pokemon. So the influence is Capsule Monsters, but he said when the owner dies, what happens to the Pokemon in the ball? Existential crisis. I can see it on your face.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to imagine that they're not uncomfortable in there because they're not like, oh, you let me out for a second, I'm going to make a run for it. So maybe they're just kind of chilling, hanging. Maybe they have no concept of time. Do they even exist when they're in there? We don't know.
Do they perish away?
Well, we know they don't perish because I do know when developing the game, they intentionally had made sure that when you defeated a Pokemon in battle, it always fainted. It never died. Because the creator, Satoshi Shiojari, was like, hey, I don't like the way kids associate video games and death because it's always like, oh, my guy died or I died. And they wanted to kind of tweak it so that there was a little bit more respect placed on when something dies. And so that none of the Pokemon ever die. They just faint.
That's fair. I guess they don't die. We won't be as morbid as we thought.
But then again, like later games introduce like fossils of Pokemon, so like do they die eventually? Like I don't know. I guess we can get super weirdly existential or into this, but at the end of the day, red v blue, baby, let's go.
I mean, all the legendaries at the end of the day, outside of the fire, water, and electric, like the Moltres, Zapdos, and Articuno, Mew and Mewtwo are like can time travel. I don't know what's going on there.
Nobody does. They're just cool. They're just cool as hell.
So there was always something to feel about selecting your first Pokemon, right? Let's get into. You had your choice. You said you chose Charmander.
I was a Charmander guy. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, you're given a choice between a turtle, a plant, and a dinosaur. I mean, like I don't know, 12 years old. I think the choice is pretty clear. I'm going dinosaur 100% of the time. Oh, and it breathes fire on things and has a cool fire tail. Yes, absolutely.
See, I didn't see him as a dinosaur. His other name is Charmander, so isn't he a salamander?
Shut up.
That's why I went with Squirtle. And then
no,
The
Oh,
show
go
had
ahead.
the Squirtle Squad with the glasses, like
Oh yeah.
Squirtle, Squirtle.
A lot of the early designs were based on like prehistoric animals, like dinosaurs specifically, which is why they kind of look the way they do. And man, I also miss that art style a little bit. They've definitely changed since then.
Yeah, I mean, now we have a whole generation of Pokemon that are made from ice cream.
Yeah, which is just stupid. But also, like, stylistically, I feel like all the Pokemon are kind of rounder now. I mean, not like in shape, but like they have rounder edges, and I really kind of miss. Like, if you look back and look at the early artwork for those games, some of those Pokemon look pretty cool, and now they just all look like, all right, I can see every single one of these 1,000 Pokemon being a plush in someone's bedroom. Like, what happened to the rugged looking rock things? And I don't know.
Eh, I beg to differ because like you have things like Joltik where it's just like a little I don't even know what type of animal it is, but it's spiny. Uh,
I always thought it was like a cat that like came out of the dryer and had a lot of static electricity, and that's why it looked the way it did.
I can understand them wanting to sell as many plushies, right? Like when we were in Japan, every store had at least 100 different styles of the 1,000 that exist, and everyone wants to get their favorite one.
Yeah, it's the most profitable intellectual property in the world.
That's insane.
I mean, they make more off merchandise than they do video games. So, what are you going to do, you know? Keep buying them because they're fun.
Yeah, and that this is a tangent, but I saw that thing that was like Mario. What's he gonna look like in the next 100 years, and how the IP is going to change? It's it it goes to show you with like Game Freak, right? That you can just put out an okay game within ZA. Like we're enjoying it, but for overall, like it could have done they could have done a lot more, and they're just printing money.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I think part of it, to some degree, is that they're obviously, moving to like a three-dimensional kind of style as opposed to the top-down 2D sprite work that they kind of lingered on for a very long time. Even when Black and White 2 came out, people were like, "Really? We're not moving past what this looks like." Okay. And then X and Y came out, which I thought looked good, and then I guess people didn't like the story or the gameplay or whatnot. But it's I feel like it's in a rut just because from a progression standpoint, it's innovating on itself, and I don't think it's drawing a lot of inspiration from other franchises. And I think it knows that it has a fan base and a player base that it needs to cater to. And so when you get a true spin-off like Legend ZA, it's embraceable because it takes aspects of what you love but isn't afraid to do new things with them. The earlier games, I mean, it took a long time to develop Red and Blue because the team was small, but it pulled a lot of inspiration from things that at the time were doing things that were new and unique, and Pokemon kind of put its spin and take on it. Now it just seems like Pokemon evolves from Pokemon, and we just hope that it gets a little better. But like, I don't know, it's kind of like incestuous at this point, where eventually it's just kind of homogenizing itself down to blandness. So we're gonna hope that the next like mainline game does something to invigorate a little bit. But the early influences were pretty significant, I think, in shaping what this game looked like.
Yeah, I definitely feel like in ZA when I see the mega evolutions that I'm just like, am I watching Digimon? Like I liked Digimon back in the day with the TV show, but like the creatures just when they mega evolve, sometimes they don't even look like what they originally looked like. And the one that comes to mind is Heracross, and then whatever his mecha version is, he went from like a dung beetle to like this metallic like toy looking thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you start to pigeonhole, like, oh, he's a steel type, so he has to look like something metal.
Oh, I guess that
I
makes
guess
sense.
kind of forces their hand a little bit. Then again,
Yeah.
I think steel types are stupid. Like, we've diversified a little too much there.
Some things that I feel like Pokemon does well, right, is take from other RPGs. I definitely feel like Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest did a
Yeah,
decent
for
job
sure.
of introducing like RPG elements that Pokemon took and developed. And then when it came to Pokemon and you collecting a group of six, Dragon Quest eventually evolved and created Dragon Quest Monsters, which I really enjoyed. You always had three of the what's the Dragon Ball guy's name that also did Dragon Quest? Akira Toriyama.
Toriyama, yeah.
Yeah, he did a good job of trying to parallel Pokemon with you being able to capture the main villains in Dragon Quest and breeding them and trying to create new and stronger ones. I definitely enjoy a good like catch 'em game, and Pokemon was the first that I can recall.
Yeah, it was. And that Dragon Quest influence also, I mean, Toriyama's art style for Dragon Quest. Look at some of those early creature designs and tell me they could also not double as Pokemon, or there are early 151 Pokemon that looks like they ripped off Toriyama. But as far as the catching aspect, yeah, that was the hard sell where Nintendo was like, "Hey, this game's about collecting things," and they were like, "Well, no, what's the point though?" And that was the big emphasis of that early on was we want you to collect all these things and go about your business and how you do that. I don't think there was
to be
what's
the
that?
best, the very best.
Well, because you got to catch them all, right? Like the marketing slogan writes itself, but it's also the main draw of the game. And in that catching of them all was a sense of discovery because you weren't sure. I went into a cave. What did you expect to find? Well, now we expect Zubats and more Zubats and, oh, look, Zubats. But when you're 12 and you're playing this game for the first time, you come across 12 Zubats and an Onix. That Onix kind of freaks you out for a little bit or blows your mind. You're like, oh my God, this is so cool. And then you have the random encounter aspect of like, oh, I had it, but I didn't catch it and it got away and now I can't find it again and now I'm trying to find it. And so like there's a really compelling like aspect of this game that I think does cater, well, especially when we were that age, like to that age of just like imagination and wonderment and kind of like wondering what's around the bend. And now it's all unfortunately very formulaic because we've been playing it for 30 years. Or almost 30 years. And so it does kind of lose some of that wonderment, but I still got a little bit of a kick in ZA when they're like, hey, I found these Pokemon hanging around, and it was like Bulbasaur and Squirtle and Charmander, and I was like, oh, snap, cool, I want to take one. And then they let you have it, and I was like, yes. So like you can't escape that. Like even in the modern games, the thorough through line to like where it started, it's still impactful. I mean, this game was a smashing success internationally when it came out, and I think part of that is because it was fun to play, but it also really captured the imagination of, young kids and got them to talk about something, right?
Yeah, I think this was the first game that like I really dove into as a kid that didn't have a hero villain story. Like, yeah, Gary was your opposition, but he wasn't really like trying to blow up the world like every other game.
Right. Yeah. There wasn't like, and I call it like an anti-trope. You weren't like a knight going around trying to save the world from imploding, which is Dragon Quest, right? So this was kind of nice where it's just like, no, you're a kid in like a safe, comfortable area with different, biomes apparently. But it was kind of grounded in that sense. Like, oh my God, he has a TV in his house and he can ride a bike. And like, I do that. Like that was kind of cool at the time when a lot of video games were like fantasy oriented or sci-fi oriented. It wasn't about just, a kid in a small town. It was something really special.
It made me want to boot Pokemon Blue back up. Cause
yeah, it's so hard to, but go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. It reminds me of like why Earthbound is one of my favorite games. Is like the same thing. It was not the norm, right? We in Pokemon are not saving the world. We're just trying to have some fun, collecting as many as we can. Yeah, you want to be part of the Elite Six. What were they called?
I forget. I don't think I ever got to them.
Really? No,
I think I did all the gym battles and got the badges, and I was like, cool, I'm good. I have to
Oh.
this day beaten 2 Pokemon games, and I've probably played like a dozen.
Oh wow, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
I've beaten two, or I'm sorry, Pokemon Blue, the original, and then I beat Pokemon like X or Y. And other than that, I have not seen a game full to completion.
I guess that goes to like what we're talking about, where it doesn't really matter that there is no like set end, right? Like there's no defeat the villain and then be immortalized forever. It's what you make of it, right? Like trying to collect and complete the Pokedex of 151. Obviously 150 because Mew wasn't in it, but you could do some hacks and things. But yeah, I guess as a child, you get to choose your own adventure, which is kind of what they're doing now, right? Like you start the game out with ZA and get the freedom. In that one, you were a little bit more linear when it came to all of the towns and and like you said, what Pokemon you would run into depending on if you are in a cave or in the forest. But overall, it just it, it sheds new light. I'm kind of interested that like the game's been out for almost 30 years, and I never thought of it as like you don't need to complete it to feel satisfied.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason why I usually bounced off them was not that I didn't find it super compelling, but as someone who, as much as I love RPGs now, grew up not kind of fundamentally understanding why I was not successful, right? It's not just like mash the button and eventually you'll shoot fast enough or punch fast enough to get to the end of the level. It was, well, I have this really cool creature that I caught and I want to battle with him, but like he's a level 6 and I'm up against whatever, and it always got to a point in Pokemon where I was like, okay, I have to go down Route 1 now, and I battle the first guy and he like wipes half my team out, and then I go back to the town to go to the Pokies, like to heal them, and then I'm back out and I'm just like back and forth, and it kind of got to a point where it's like I don't want to do this anymore. And that's usually why I was always intrigued, where I was like, oh my god, a new Pokemon, I'm in. But about halfway through, I was like, all right, my Pokemon are underleveled. This is grindy more than it is fun. I kind of don't care about the story. I'm out. Like, I just gave up. And the reason why X and Y I completed was because of a feature that they've implemented in that game that they've had since, which is, it's like very lamented with the Pokemon purists, and that is the notion of XP share.
Yeah,
Um,
quality
so
of
in the
life.
yeah, right, which is a quality of life feature. And for those that don't know, in the original Red and Blue, your Pokemon only got XP if they engaged in the battle.
Throw them
Um,
out, retract them, put someone else
right.
out.
Well, which is when I went back to play Leaf Green, I was like, all right, my starting Pokemon is Magikarp, because eventually it will level up into Gyarados, which is pretty powerful. And so I would always start with him as my, and then swap out, but it kind of made those battles a little bit more monotonous. And so XP share, I was like, oh, cool. So my entire party levels up, which has been a feature in, I mean, dozens of RPGs since then. So why not this one? And it's really just the people that are holding on to that as part of that skill challenge that want to see it there. I think they did eventually make it so you can turn it off, but never. No, I always want it on.
Yeah, it makes it much easier. Again, like the monotony of throwing a Pokemon out that is weak and can't do anything but flop. But
Yeah, and pray that it doesn't get one shot, and then you're like, all right, well, that's a waste.
and then becomes one of the strongest ones is Gyarados. The last thing I just wanted to talk about, you had mentioned and you had notion to, but we didn't talk about is there were no shiny Pokemon back in, so it was very nice and easy to catch 150. Now like Pokedexes are like, oh, there's 2 entries for this Slowbro and this Gallon Slowbro, or like this shiny version and this non. And I'm just like, I don't want to go through the effort of a complete Pokedex. That just would be nightmarish for me.
Um, yeah, I mean, once they started doing region-specific ones, it. Not that I'm saying that it lost interest, but I was never super compelled to catch them all, even originally. I kind of like organically went about, all right, I want to play through the game and I'll catch what I catch, and I'm not going to like rummage through a field or tall grass and hit random encounters in hopes to find a different type of Pokemon. So the notion of shiny hunting is really kind of lost on me, because it's like Pokemon, for all intents and purposes, is gambling, right? So like when you've got a less than 1% chance to get something, I value my time way more than having a a different colored Pokemon. Like I don't know, I can be past it.
Yeah, that's fair too. Like, I just want to enjoy the game, collect as many as I can, hopefully beat the story, and move on to the next installment.
Right.
And with that, I just want to pose a question to anyone listening. What generation got you into Pokemon? And obviously, who was your starter? With that, that seems to be all the space we have left on slot 2. So next month we will delete some save data and make room for November releases.